We are live. Hello, everyone. Big thanks for joining. Really excited for this one today. We are joined by the wonderful Sandi Phoenix, and I'll do a proper intro in a second. But if you're in the right place, this one is From the Inside Out, Leading for a Thriving Child-Safe Culture in ECEC. Before we start, just want to do a quick acknowledgement of country. So we'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land we work and live on, honouring their elders past, present and emerging. We respect the deep connections Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples have with country and commit to learning from their wisdom as we build our shared future. So big thanks for joining, everybody. As you know, we're Mana, and we're really committed to ensuring that every child has an extraordinary start to life. And a part of that is running these professional development series for the sector. And we're very grateful to be joined by the wonderful Sandi Phoenix, who's the founder of Phoenix Support for Educators. Would you like to say a quick hi to the fan base, Sandi?
Hey everyone, it's so good to be joining you for this chat. I'm at home on Quandamooka country, which is on the bayside of Brisbane, just for a hot minute. I've not been home long, and I fly out again on Friday. But I am very glad to be here at home to chat with you from various areas of the country. Do feel free to pop the that country and place from where you're coming from in the chat right now. It would be cool to see where we're all joining with this wondrous technology.
Oh, awesome! Yeah, very diverse group of attendees. So that's awesome. Just before we kick off, so quick note on housekeeping, where you can use the chat to ask questions, or also the Q&A box there. Feel free to get around those comments that you really enjoy. We really want to keep this chat positive, and I guess bring more light to kind of the awesome work that everyone is doing in the sector. So if you can keep it positive and constructive, that would be awesome. These recordings will be available after, and we'll do some polls in the session as well, just to kind of get a gauge on a couple of things that helps us in this conversation. So without further ado, welcome to the wonderful Sandi. Sandi, first, just might start off for those that haven't had the privilege to meet you yet. We'd love to kind of just hear a little bit about more about your story and your passion, and a bit of a quick overview would be great.
It's always really tricky for me to work out where to start with that question, because my career hasn't jumped and changed. I've always been here. And so it's a long one kind of path career. I can see friends in the comments, which is so cool. So yeah, I'll know who you are. Thank you so much for joining. I tagged some of you, and I know some of you saw my post the other night. So I'm really glad you have jumped on to join me. And now I just want to stop and chat with you all, because I haven't had a chance to catch up. I was I grew up in a home that was family daycare. My mum is an educator, and so I think I've been an educator since I was about 3 years old as her assistant. And it was a really natural progression for me to move into education and care, but I was also very passionate about psychology as a school leaver. So I went straight into studying my first psych degree, psychological science, in 1998, working as an educator. And in that time, I was really concerned that in education and care, where with the diploma, which I was doing alongside sort of in my maternity leave, I would do the diploma and then I go back to my degree. And I realized, working with children, that there was a huge gap that psychological science is talking about that we weren't talking about in education and care. And so I moved really quickly into a leadership position. And many of you, and I know some of your names here, and I know this to be fact, many of you also started as a leader, as a coordinator or a director of a service in our early 20s. And, looking back, I was like, oh, what was I doing in a leadership position at 21 years old? But this is what happens in education and care. If we're good at what we do, we move quickly through the ranks and into a leadership position without any leadership training. And so if there's a mistake to make in leadership, I've 100% made that mistake at some point in time. And then I moved from being a coordinator of a school aged care service to working in management as positive behaviour support across 19 school aged care services and 2 long daycare services in a council service here locally on Quandamooka country. And that was, a really eye-opening experience for me. And quickly I realized I was saying the same things at every single site that I visited around, like, here's some nuggets from psychology that might be useful. And then I'd repeat myself, and then I'd start again. And it was taking a really long time to kind of get through those cycles. And my boss at the time said, you know what, we're going to bring everyone together and you're just going to say it once and we're going to train them. And then you're going to visit and see how they go. So yeah, I'm 23 years old when I did my first presentation and I nearly passed out. And I was so nervous for many years presenting publicly, but I was forced into that, because if I wanted to share this message and if I wanted to support these children en masse, then this is how we're going to have to do it, So moved into inclusion support as an inclusion support facilitator. There was funding for a training arm of that, so I was continuing to train as well as work on site at services, coaching and mentoring around inclusion. And then the funding for the training was pulled, guidelines changed, and I really wanted to keep training. So I started Phoenix Support for Educators in 2012. And then whenever anyone said, how do I do what you do? I would say, oh, don't. The first 4 years was an absolute nightmare. Just come and join me at Phoenix Support. And now there's 20 of us. So almost 20 of us at Phoenix Support for Educators who are all really passionate about sharing parts of our expertise with education and care, with the education and care sector through resources on writing. We write a lot at Phoenix Support for Educators. It's all free and on our blog. And of course, professional development. And so now I lead a team almost 20 of working across the whole country, and I also work internationally as well. So you all might know me from my framework, the Phoenix Cups, which kind of happened accidentally after I started Phoenix Support for Educators, and I'd been training behaviour for a long time. And I started kind of just accidentally in a workshop using an analogy about cups to represent needs, and represent all of the theories that I was talking about and making it accessible. And then people started printing off my slides and putting them as big posters in their rooms. And I was like, oh, they're ugly. So I, got a designer involved and then started publishing. And then, the rest is history.
Awesome. Well, yeah, incredible. We could probably do a whole webinar just on your life story, but I think what's really clear is that
that's a lot. We won't do that.
I think there's a book on it, which I actually started to
I'm sure it's coming.
Podcast. So, really grateful to have you and to have your experience. And I think, this is a really timely occasion. I think, right now, the time I guess we're going through in the sector is one of change, and one of where leadership is really important. So I was keen to kind of, throw to you around why your message to leaders around why now is more important than ever to lead. What have you been noticing in the sector, and particularly with this child safety narrative? Why is leadership so important to that? If we could set the scene for everyone.
Yeah, what a big question. I think at the moment, education and care, we could pick a narrative, which way do we want to go? Do we want to look hopeful and optimistic, or do we want to look at what we've just been through together? And, we've certainly been here with you. Our team are on the ground. We work across all of Australia, and a few hundred services a year we're working alongside and in. And there is a lot there's a lot of things that we can say about what's happened to our well-being over the last couple of years. But I think I would prefer to kind of lean on what can we do now and into the future to support and scaffold and ensure that the spaces that we walk into as a team is a space where people can thrive. Mm-hmm. And I guess the Phoenix Cups framework helps us here. And so I will give a super brief overview. I'm well aware that some of you have read a lot of my stuff and been in a lot of my presentations and done my courses. So I don't want to recap anything, but there's always new research. There's always new ways of thinking or looking at the research theory and evidence, coming out of psychology and neuroscience, which I'm studying postgrad at the moment. So I'll find where I can some kind of new research and evidence to talk about as we're talking.
Before we go,
but I think we need a framework to move forward, and a couple of frameworks, and I hope to be able to kind of nudge towards a couple. And also, what is the literature telling us about leadership? And so I'll lean on that. So
awesome. Before we dive into that, I think I just wanted to kind of give a shout out to everyone in the room for, I guess, making the time for yourself and leading into these conversations. We know that's not always easy. And I sort of wanted to get a bit of a pulse check in the room just around, where do people feel like they're being held back in their leadership today? Like what things are, I guess, blocking them from moving forward, just to kind of give us a bit of a frame. If you can answer that poll there, that would just be really helpful for us. So we've got a few through on team capability and confidence, lack of support, managing stress. Seems like team capability and confidence is a big one. Compliance and admin stacking up there as well. So I'll leave that running in the background, but I think that gives us a good snapshot. I think, the things we hear a lot about is, we have had a lot of really good talent, I guess, leave our sector. I guess this is not a new thing, and like you said, we are seeing people that are quite young going up in through the ranks without that necessary support, and it's leaving a gap. And I think this is such a critical time. And I sort of want to dive into, your cups, your frameworks, because I think first off, it's really important in leadership is leading self. Before you can sort of, as you give your analogy, can't pour from an empty cup. So would love to kind of first start there, dive into those frameworks, and then team, once we have a look at that, we can then go through, okay, once you know how to lead yourself, then how do we go about enacting change with the kind of lens of child safety as well, as there's a bit of a thematic throughout this, because we know that's a big leadership kind of priority right now too. So let's start there, Sandi, if that's cool. And thanks everyone for filling out that poll. So that gives us a bit of a good sense. So Sandi, over to you. Would love to hear more about what tools or frameworks you have to help leaders first understand themselves, and people, if you've got a pen and paper like I do, we can start to go through that. Thanks, Sandi.
I want to talk to, of course, the Phoenix Cups framework, but also VIA Strengths, which is coming out of positive psychology. The strengths research there, it's been around for a long time. It's very well researched. And it's useful to use in your leadership if you're not already using it. And I would also like to talk then to what does that kind of profile, strengths profile, and a cups or a needs strengths profile, then do to our leadership, and talk a couple of leadership styles that might be, that we might see through that. So the first, of course, if you are not familiar with the Phoenix Cups framework, and even if you are, hopefully this gives you just a different way of explaining it to somebody else, is that one of the strongest underpinning research theory and evidence to the Phoenix Cups framework that we illustrate using cups is a theoretical framework called self-determination theory. And if you don't know that already, one of the things that I have noticed, especially with the New South Wales funding to do our course, so if you're in New South Wales, you can email me about that. I'll send you the special little secret link, or you can Google my name and New South Wales Department of Education. It'll probably be on their website. But the course is very intensive, and what we found is that assessors are going, they're well trained in it, they love the course, and then when they go and see some of our resources in the services in New South Wales, they have asked questions like, so what is the theory, research and evidence underpinning the Phoenix Cups framework? So can you please say self-determination theory as a primary underpinning evidence. So let me tell you what self-determination theory says about Gabby. Gabby is popping links in. Really appreciate that. Including, hello Gabby. Gabby is from Woden, and she does incredible work down there. And her and I wrote the book together, which is about chickens in early childhood. And so we bang on a lot about nature, pedagogy, and why that's so important. But she's also popped a link there to the Phoenix Cups, which is different to our Phoenix Support for Educators website. So the Cups is just about cups and all the things for all the humans, whereas Phoenix Support for Educators is a lot more than cups for educators. So that link is there. So let me tell you just really briefly about what self-determination theory says. And that is that if we're asking the question, why do people behave the way that they do? What do people need for their well-being? Those are they're the same. They're different angles of the same question, right? And we're looking to psychology. If we had a look to psychology in 1940, if we had a look, we were talking about Freud before because I visited his house in Vienna last month, which was, oh my God, amazing. But if we had have asked Freud in like 1910, maybe 1920, he would have said that we behave the way that we do because of unresolved childhood conflicts. And he probably would have said, like, why is that child behaving the way that they do, or what does that educator need for her well-being? He might have said something crazy like she has penis envy, clearly, and an unresolved conflict about that from childhood. It was interesting. Psychology took us in a really interesting direction when it was being born. But what happened soon after that was researchers said we need psychology to be taken seriously as a science, and they went into labs and did science with animals. And what came out of what motivates them, what drives them to do what they do, came out of mostly research with rats that said we're motivated by rewards and consequences. That is true of rats. It is absolutely not true of a very complex human brain. So that was debunked very quickly, although that is still, as an underpinning evidence, still used in lots of institutions like prisons, hospitals, and schools to manage the behavior of large groups of people. But psychology has ever since been saying that's wrong. Oops, we made a mistake. Here's some new evidence. And so, of course, we've got people like Maslow and humanistic psychologists saying, I think that human beings are not motivated by rewards and consequences. That's not what they need for their well-being either. What they need is to have their needs met. And so self-determination theory is one of the most cited today theoretical frameworks to answer the question, what do people need for their well-being? And what motivates them to behave the way that they do. And that is, we are intrinsically motivated to self-determine our basic human life needs of relatedness, which we illustrate as the connection cup, competence, which we illustrate as the mastery cup, and relatedness, competence, and autonomy, which we illustrate as the freedom cup. And then, of course, we have some leftover from Glass's choice theory we used in the early days, which is the fun cup. But even Maslow talked about that play being an intrinsic need. And then, of course, we have safety, which represents that survival need for food, water, shelter, sure, but also psychological safety, order, predictability. The human brain is a predicting machine. It's constantly predicting. So your brain predicted this moment a few moments ago. And if I say something totally whack, like I said penis before, and now I've said penis 3 times in a presentation, that's maybe something you weren't predicting. So your brain then does a little bit of a shuffle and goes, oh, well, that was a prediction error. And now I need to correct for that error. And now next time I say the word penis, you're probably not going to be surprised, right? So that our brain is constantly doing this prediction error, correct the prediction error. And psychologists have a very fancy name for that. It's called learning. And so we learn through that process, but we also are intrinsically motivated to meet our basic human life needs. So let me just cut all the psychobabble and say, why do we behave the way that we do? We are motivated to fill up our cups. And we can think of those cups as being a safety cup, connection cup, freedom cup, mastery cup, and a fun cup. And what do we need for our well-being? Well, we need the skills and ability to be able to fill up those cups. We need the freedom to be able to fill up those cups. And we also need our environment to be conducive of that. So when our cups are sort of half full, equal parts met need, and then equal parts what Chris and I in the Phoenix Cups book called the will to fill, that's the empty part of the cup. Then we kind of feel like when people say to you, how are you feeling today? And you kind of scan and go, fine, good, meh. That is that kind of equal parts met need and unmet need. When the cup gets fuller and you have less will to fill and more met need, your brain will give you a signal that need is met, keep doing what you're doing. And that's through a positive emotion. And then, but if the cup gets empty, let's think your connection cup, let's say it starts to get below half full. And now we have a huge will to fill the connection cup and just a little bit in the connection cup. Your brain will start to signal, we have an unmet need over here. And we can think of emotion, and sometimes it's been talked about as putting us in motion. So our brain will then sense that we have an unmet need, and this, we're still unsure about the biomarkers of this, but we know that there are hormones involved like vasopressin and oxytocin and neurotransmitters and chemicals that tell us we haven't had enough connection. So we get an empty connection cup, and then that signal from the brain, that like kind of news report from our psyche, as Mark Brackett calls it, is information that we then use our skills to be able, and we're driven towards meeting that need. So we'll call a friend, or we'll go and see somebody, or we'll go and hang out. If we're kind of in that mode of I'm feeling okay enough to be able to use my skills. Right. Sometimes if the safety cup gets too empty, it will say, actually, just go to bed and just stay there. Sleep a lot or hide, or, so we often need to address a really empty safety and connection cup first. Not that we talk about needs as hierarchical, but those will definitely, being empty, will feel quite detrimental to our well-being. So when cups are full and filling, we have a really strong sense of well-being. You can have a strong sense of well-being with 4 relatively full cups and 1 empty cup, so long as you have a plan or you have the skills to be able to fill up that cup. So well-being isn't about having all full cups, but it's about having the capacity to have full cups when you want to, when you need to. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah, that's really good. Let me just play that back for everyone. So there's a few theories that are underpinning the Phoenix Cup framework. You have self-determination theory, and some people use the acronym CAR, but sort of the way that you frame it is sort of competence. So mastery, feeling great in your practice as an educator, feeling confident in how you lead teams as an example. Then you've got connection, which is, your connections with your team, finding those people that you jam with and you resonate with. Then freedom, the autonomy, so not feeling like you're getting micromanaged in your role, feeling like you can grow in the spaces that you want to grow. Then we've got the fun cup, so play and bringing. I really like that addition, because I think sometimes, I've also studied positive psychology, and I'm big on the CAR sort of stuff. But I think sometimes, with this world being constantly changing, that it can be all encompassing sometimes, and play helps us realize that we're here to have fun and explore and be creative, and we are on a floating rock at the end of the day. So not to take things too seriously, that lightness and weight, which I think is a really nice addition. And then the last one that you've got is safety, which is obviously the foundations, which is really cool. So hopefully, and I think the thing that I really love about how you talk about this, which is something that I see, I think a lot of people in our sector struggling to understand, is that really quick to try and identify the one thing that is causing them burnout or stress. And it's it's too much, it's this person, or it's too much paperwork. But like you said, life isn't so black and white like that. It's particularly with humans, we're very complex. We're not rats. I really like that analogy. So, and same with the burnout frameworks, is looking at your balance of sort of job demands and resources, but there's multiple things. So like you said, I think as a leader, it's about how do we kind of leverage these frameworks to have a better understanding ourselves, to then diagnose and which areas or which cups might be lower than others. And then I really like your analogy of prioritizing those and trying to kind of have that balancing act. So hopefully, thanks for sharing the link there, Gabby, for those that can take that away after and use that as a framework to kind of help with that sort of self-understanding. And I really love, I know that the strengths, the VIA strengths is another framework on that.
Yeah, let's talk to that. When you click on the cups, you'll see there's a quiz, and it's a 30-question quiz. So, take it with a grain of salt. It's a reflection tool. But the idea of the quiz, which will order your cups from biggest to smallest for you based on your answers. The idea of that is, it came from Glass's work in a need strength profile. This is an adult concept, and we don't use the need strength profile idea, big cups, small cups, with children, because this is a fully formed brain, well matured into the prefrontal cortex, that has had enough time in the world to establish an identity. So your big cup is your dominant cup that often will drive a lot more of your behaviors, and your smaller cup is still there but less important for you. It doesn't motivate you enough, very much. And so when people are doing a wellbeing plan and they've done the Phoenix Cups quiz, sometimes they're inclined to do a plan for their biggest cup. And I ask them not to do that, because unless they've identified that it's empty, because empty is unmet need and met is met need, and that's different to big and small cups. So if you have, for example, I have a dominant mastery cup, and it drives me to succeed. It drives me to finish things. It drives me to do another degree, even when I don't have time for a postgrad and I'm writing an assignment at the moment, and I will whinge about it for days until it's done, and then it'll turn into a presentation and I'll love it. But it is that drive through motivation through mastery has been there since probably around about adolescence, I think, from my own, watching my own guinea pigs grow up. I mean, children. There have been 3 biological children of mine and 4 stepchildren. What I know, and most of them are grown and left home, what I know is that they, around about adolescence, sort of early adolescence for the girls and later for the boys, they start to be able to, they identify with one particular needs profile and go, I think this might be my dominant cup. And I'll be like, I think I knew that for quite a while, but yeah, glad you're on it too. And I wouldn't assume it because, well, I might assume it for my own children, but with other people, it's really important for them to express what their dominant cup is, because sometimes we might see a set of behaviors and go, oh, that's all, that they must have a big mastery cup. But the order and predictability that we're looking at is actually coming from their safety motivation. So, it's really important for the person using the behaviors to tell us where that's coming from. So that's why you do your need strength profile. You work out what that is. If the quiz says something you think is wrong, reorder it, think about it, talk about it with your friends, and work out what it is for you, and then share it with your colleagues. It's really, there's going to be no surprises. If you haven't done this already, and I know many of you have, there's going to be no surprises there. The ones that have dominant fun cups, because they're having chair races up and down the hallway during their staff meeting, and breaking things, and potentially doing practical jokes on people in the bathroom. So it's quite obvious. And your connection colleagues, they're hugging everybody who walks in and making sure everyone feels a sense of inclusion. And I always know where to find the big safety cup peeps. They're sitting around the catering table, and so they'll just be there with the cabanossi and cheese. Predictable meals are important for big safety cups, as is a lot of sleep, and rest, or at least downtime. So big safety cups, them because we have to finish our staff meetings on time, and they need a good 8 hours sleep before they shift the next day, or they're just going to be an ass to work with, actually, because they don't cope very well with an empty safety cup because it's so big. So that will to fill is huge. So knowing your big cup is important, but knowing your small cup is also very important. And my safety cup is small. And I used to really ignore the fact that I needed safety, I needed predictability, I needed food, because I don't need a lot of it. And that's dangerous. It's really dangerous. And I am very, very careful, after having a few wake-up calls now, very careful about planning for my safety cup first, because if I don't plan for it, it will get forgotten about. So those of you who have a small safety cup know the safety cup behaviors that happen. And that is, you'll run on the smell of an oily rag. You don't need a lot of rest or predictability. You'll take huge high risks, but you will also do something crazy that big safety cups don't believe us that we do. We forget to eat if we have a small safety cup, because we're just not motivated to plan for that kind of thing. So it's something we actually have to get really good, what we call skill to fill. around. We have to be able to plan our skills to fill our safety cup if it's small, or whatever cup is small for you. If it's freedom or connection or mastery or fun, plan to fill it, because if you don't, it will run dry and it'll stay there a lot of the time and it'll quietly impact your well-being. So, planning for all of them is super important.
Yeah, no, that's really, maybe just while we're on that kind of that safety analogy, keen to kind of also weave the child's safety priorities throughout this. And I guess you see a team that really have this language of understanding self, their cups. How does that translate into a child-safe culture in terms of what does that look like with children at the service too? Keen to get your views on that lens.
Yeah, look, this is complex and I don't want to move out of my lane, but I am going to talk to broadly leadership, broadly, and profiles. So what, let me just introduce some leadership literature language. There is a couple of styles. First, talked about in the 70s by Burns, transactional leadership and transformational leadership. And in the 70s and 80s, that was often talked about as a continuum. Transactional being bad leadership and transformational being good leadership. And we need to move in that direction. The current literature kind of blew that out and said, well, actually, there is benefits to both types of leadership depending on your situation, right? But what I've found is in my work, let me just give you a quick overview of transactional. Transactional is like clear goals, expectations, tasks, very much focused on those goals and tasks, and very ordered. The transactional leader will have checklists coming out their ears. They'll have policies, processes, risk assessments, the whole lot. Transformational leadership, however, is, and particularly if we go right up the other end of transformational leadership, is quite, usually the transformational leader has some charisma, is really inspirational, can convince people to do stuff by through a motivational speech at a staff meeting. They are also, though, are very much about the individual and coaching the individual and supporting them to get their needs met at work. So that's that. My husband Chris has recently written and spoken a lot about creating a culture of well-being through using, making sure that our environments are cup filling. And so we see that it's called in the literature in transformational leadership, it's called individualized consideration. So we see that individualized consideration in that transformational leadership style. But transformational leaders, if we're talking a continuum and right up the other end, are terrible at the stuff on the other end. So when there is, and the literature says this a lot, when there is a safety incident, there is no place for transformational leadership. Yeah. We actually need a transactional leader in those moments instantly. And it's really difficult to move between the styles if one is your default. Now, a lot of people sit sort of in the middle and they can jump between the styles, and that's great. And that's exactly what we need right now. But if you're sitting in the transformational leadership space, then it is going to be paining you right now to have to go through all of the checklists and the procedures and update policies and move into this transactional space that doesn't feel right for you in your leadership. And that's what I'm seeing for transformational leaders. Before, they were doing innovative stuff, and they're often big freedom cups with small safety cups. Not always, but freedom's usually in the top and safety's normally in the bottom. And so being in a transactional space where transactional leaders I often see have big safety and often big safety mastery together. So they've got a very organized workplace, but big safety mastery cups also have a very organized pantry, I have discovered. They have they decant their flour and put a label on it that says flour. I would love to be able to do that, but my safety cup is too small. So that is, they have, everything is organized, and that transactional leader is in their element right now, because when there is a safety incident, that's where they shine. Right, we need to get back to basics here. We need to get back to where is the procedures, the policies, the safety, the checklists. And so that's what I'm seeing right now, is people that are at the too far in the transformational end, which have been doing innovative, incredible, out of the box things until now, are now being forced to borrow from transactional leadership. And I think it's important for us to be able to name those leadership styles so we know what we're borrowing from, and then also know that it's only temporary. If you need to move back, you can, when things are all back in order. And if you are in the transactional space and it's your time to shine right now. When things settle down, then it's time to look to how do I edge a little bit closer and borrow skills from transformational leadership so that we can get back to innovation, so that we can get back to ensuring that early childhood education and care is at the forefront of good practice in education and care, because Australia has proudly been able to say that since the inception of our national quality framework. And I would really love to be able to continue to say that we are doing things ahead of education and care, education across the country. Yeah.
No, that's really good. Great overview. So just to kind of play that back and clarify a couple of things. So the strengths, the cups framework helps us kind of understand, I guess, that analogy of putting your own mask on before you can help others, and understanding those things, and also how you relate to other people. But then when it comes to the kind of transformational leadership framework, is slightly different in terms of more around how you enact change. And so those two kind of work hand in hand around understanding yourself, how you gain resources, but then also is it how you kind of lead others. And in this sort of climate, you sort of mentioned that point around looking at understanding self, but then also how do you kind of take a strengths-based approach to leverage those different approaches within the team to be able to have one more than the other. Like, I'm keen to kind of, because then I know there's the strengths element to it. So
let's add a third and final framework. Yeah. So the next that I think is useful to use together in this is the VIA strengths. So you can Google VIA strengths and you'll find a couple of different places where you can do the questionnaire. I am going to encourage you to use the Authentic Happiness website. So that is University of Pennsylvania, Authentic Happiness. Seligman he is at UPenn, and he is the co-founder of Positive Psychology. He still works at UPenn and does really great work there. He's just published a new book, so you'll see him advertising that. He's not shy. You're seeing him advertising that all over the front page of Authentic Happiness. I visited it yesterday and noticed. But he, oh, thanks Hayden for putting that there. Yeah. So I prefer to use that because what I love about the Authentic Happiness website is you can create a login, and I think I did so maybe 10 or 12 years ago, and then it keeps your data. And so I can see over time, every time that I've done the VIA strengths, what stayed the same and what's changed. But there's also a whole bunch of other surveys and questionnaires. The other thing that I love about that website is that when we're using that, if you're okay with this, we're contributing to the positive psych data. And millions of people have contributed to positive psych data that are used in publications around positive psychology through that website and through those scales and questionnaires and things like that. So I think it's amazing. And I think that once you do the VIA on there, or wherever you choose to do it, and then get the printout, it'll list you 1 to 25 of your strengths, strongest, 2 not so strong on the bottom, right? And then you can come together with your team and talk about where are we similar, and importantly, where are we different? And you'll also see, so get them to do the Phoenix Cups quiz as well, because bring that as well as your VIA to the team meeting, and you'll also see where they kind of cross over too. So I will give you an example of the VIA. So my top strengths are appreciation of beauty and excellence, which when I first did this, I was just starting Phoenix Support for Educators. And I thought, well, what use is that? Like, my mastery cup was like, what are we going to do with that strength? That's pointless. Like, oh, what? I love a good museum. That's not really helping me. And then over time, I realized my appreciation of beauty and excellence has actually created the most beautiful, the most excellent team of facilitators that support professional development across this country, and I love working with them. So it turns out it's been pretty useful after all. Another is hope, optimism, and future-mindedness, and capacity to love and be loved. And so all of those together, I was like, oh, it's very fluffy, but what am I going to do with those? And as it turned out, it's really served me since learning about that in my work. What is a problem for me is my bottom. You might be really surprised to know that my least strong is humility, prudence, modesty, So that is, it says thing when you're particularly high in those, it'll say things like, you don't prefer the spotlight. And I'm like, oh no, I very much want the spotlight and the red carpet, actually. So it didn't surprise me that was on the bottom. But that means that I need people in my team who have humility, modesty, prudence, discretion at the top of their strengths. And I do. A couple of months ago in our most recent team retreat, we did that again. I brought it all together, and amazingly, people in our leadership team have that at the top, and in our management team and our administration team, and those of us who are facilitators had that at the bottom. We loved seeing how that beautiful puzzle comes together, and I really encourage you to do that with your team, because it is the same with cups. So what can happen if you have an opposite needs profile to somebody? Like when I work with a big safety cup, they go nuts about my lack of order, my lack of routine, my lack of predictability, my lack of checklists, my hatred of checklists even, because my small safety cup is like, oh, we don't need to do that, whatever, and can somebody else do a risk assessment, because that sounds boring. That is that small safety cup problem that I have. Whereas a big safety cup, I need to work with one, but we drive each other mad. And that big safety cup needs a lot of time to process change. They need to be able to predict what's going to happen in that change, and to predict they need to be a part of the change. And so whereas I'm like, change it up, I'll do whatever, tomorrow we're going to do something totally different, and that's a problem. And when we see it as a problem, we're going to butt heads behaviorally. But when we realize that our behavior is driven by our needs, and that person needs more safety than me, then I can see that with much more compassion and much more empathy. But I also see that as the opposite to me, that we all need here within this community, within this setting, within this space. Because if everybody had the same needs profile as me, particularly in this organization, it'd be a train wreck. Whereas when we have a really balanced profile across our teams, then we have a balanced set of strengths. So super important to appreciate that diversity and realize why we're butting heads around things is usually because we have a different needs profile. Sometimes it's just a different skill to fill, but a lot of the time it's a different need strength profile.
Yeah, because I guess for maybe those people that are new to some of these concepts, what would you say on because there's quite a lot, like when you do the VS string, you get to like 20 odd, and there's a lot of different angles that sort of seem to be talking about the sort of a similar sort of concept. For someone that's sort of new in this journey and they're trying to understand themselves, they're trying to understand their team, and then they're trying to look at this in the context, of right now where leadership is so critical. How do I kind of craft my team this way? What would you say is the first step that they should take if they were sort of entering this?
Do less crafting and more understanding. So just use these as tools for self-reflection, for understanding what's happening within your team, for seeing the same thing from a different perspective, from another angle. And so between the Phoenix Cups framework and VIA, but then also if we add in leadership styles, then we can see the problem and we can look at it over here and over here and over here. And then we can go, oh, okay, I understand that a bit more.
Yeah.
And then what to do next is it will come to you. As a leader, you've got skills and strategies. You'll work it out, or you will sometimes just notice with your team. Noticing this, I wonder if we look at it through these lenses. Is it this, this, and this? And what do you think? Let's generate some things that we can do about that. What's our next move here? Yeah. Katie, just to answer your question, it's VIA, character strengths, on the Authentic Happiness website. So if you go to questionnaires, and then you'll find it, I think it's over to the right of that box, down the bottom, VIA, character strengths.
No, thanks. That's really good in terms of, people maybe don't get overwhelmed by all these different frameworks, and there's others as well, there's STT, all that, but just using them as different lenses to shed light on it. I really like that analogy, because I think one of the things that's really important, particularly in times like this, is when we're thinking about kind of enacting change, is first you know, I know a lot of people can feel quite overwhelmed, and when you're in meerkat brain mode, you don't sort of, everything can feel like a bit of a challenge, or why can't that person do more? Why is this? But that's, you know, first understanding yourself, calming yourself down, gaining clarity, understanding your cups. And then from there, looking at kind of that current state, or doing that kind of diagnostic of what's affecting me, what's affecting the team, using different tools, like you said, to kind of actually, and in that process, I think one thing that, you know, has helped me in kind of looking at strategy and stuff like that is being okay with diverging and then converging. I think sometimes we have this rush of like wanting to find the exact answer really quickly, but I think, like you say, being able to take the time to explore different possibilities, different angles, and then once you have all that information, your brain will naturally start to converge. It kind of looks like a diamond of like converge, diverge. And then once you understand the problem, like you said, then you can brainstorm with your team. Don't try and pick the first solution, come with options, brainstorm, then look at converging. And I think for some people, that process can, you know, especially when we want things to happen quickly, is that we try and jump to the answer. But I really like the way that you framed that there, Sandi, on trying to actually use different frameworks, kind of brainstorming, doing that with your team. And I think that can be applied particularly in, you know, obviously you've got this child safety priorities, but any other priority. Is there anything you wanted to add on that?
No, yeah, really good points. And you can do that individually, like you're saying, sure. You can also do it collectively with your team.
Yeah.
And I think if you're like, okay, with all of this, what's the next move? Where do I start? I would say, first of all, make sure that your workplace is a cup filling one, or a place where all cups have the opportunity to be filled, or at least if they're emptied by the workplace, then we've got plans to fill them back up again. I think is really, really important. One of the things that we know from lots of research around educator wellbeing, and people have been putting some great research to this over the last few years, like Catherine Jones and colleagues around educator wellbeing. And what we know about educator wellbeing, just like workplace wellbeing, is that what people need is that collegiality, relationships, connection cup filling ability at work, for the connection cup not to be emptied at work, and for autonomy, so their freedom cup to be able to be filled at work, which is very, very difficult to set the scene for, but being able to create a culture where that happens, autonomy, agency, freedom, super important. I'm just going to read Liz's question. Can rewards and consequences coexist with intrinsic motivation in a way that still supports children's agency, self-regulation, and understanding of boundaries? Thanks for the curly one, Liz. Really appreciate it. The rewards and consequences are extrinsic motivation. And if we look to self-determination theory, which is a doorstop of a textbook, absolutely amazing. But the Phoenix Cups obviously illustrates it and is informed by it. So if you're using the Phoenix Cups framework, you are using echoes of self-determination theory. Ryan and DC, who wrote that, their first book was Intrinsic Motivation. They didn't create the term, but they made it famous. Also, a doorstop of a book. Now, they don't discard, and self-determination theory since certainly hasn't discarded extrinsic motivation as being a motivator, but it is not a primary motivator. Intrinsic motivation through our basic human life needs is always going to trump extrinsic motivation. So some people, when it comes to rewards, like let's just say the old school rewards chart, the sticker chart. Some people will say, and I certainly did myself, I was a trained behaviorist. I was even an ABA therapist, which is only a 6-week course, I might add. But I was also studying psych as an undergrad. So, but I was a behaviorist from 1998 until the early 2000s, until I saw the light. And I encourage you to come with me, over 20 years ago now. But I get the urge to go, but we're still, but this works. So reward, let me use the example of a sticker chart. Sometimes, and we've all used them if we've been around long enough, sometimes it works for a particular child for about 2 weeks, right? And we go, well, that worked. And then other children, you implement a sticker chart And that child will tell you where to stick your sticker chart as they're ripping it off the wall and tearing it up, right? So that child was motivated by freedom or mastery. And so they were needing freedom. They were trapped. And usually, let me give you an example. I'm going to say Jaden and Jackson. Jackson with an X. That guy's spirited. So Jaden, Jaden needed freedom, and he was being kept in his early childhood classroom. And I'm talking children's behavior for a moment just to illustrate, right? But we can do the same with adult behavior. I just don't want to bring anything up for you, but what's currently happening in your team and create some tension. So we're going to talk about children's motivation for a moment. So Jaden has just been brought inside from being outside from at 9 a.m. He is now a hostage in this room until 4 p.m. because we're not going out again because it's too hot outside, right? Don't even start me on this problem. So here we've got a child who desperately needs freedom. His freedom cup is so empty by just being inside. He knows he's not going to be let outside again until the afternoon. We're trying to manipulate and manage his behavior. His behavior is his skill to fill. It is his best choice he has to be able to fill up his cups. So he is attempting to get freedom by swearing. That's very freedom cup filling, right? Like chucking an F-bomb in as a comma. That fills our freedom cup, right? So he is trying that. So we're trying to manipulate and manage his behavior. So we use a sticker chart. He will rip that chart off the wall and he will tell you where to shove it, right? And then there is another child. We're going to call that child Jackson, also spirited. But Jackson is motivated by connection. And all he's told all day is sit down, come over here, get over there, walk slowly, walking feet inside, put your listening ears on, where's your water bottle, get your hat on, blah, 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 right? Corrections and directions are not something that human beings like to have. But we're okay with them so long as we get a lot more connections and genuine interactions after that and either side of that, a lot more, not a sandwich of 2 to 1, a lot more. So what is happening for him is his connection cup is being emptied by the interactional environment because everybody's throwing corrections and directions at him, right? So we add a sticker chart into this environment, and then we use good old behaviorist strategies like let's catch him being good, let's reward his positive behavior, let's ignore his other behavior that we don't want to see anymore. Thanks Skinner for all that stuff. It works good on rats. Let's do that with this child, right? Magic happens because we are accidentally, the magic was not in the sticker chart, it was in the sticker chart's ability to increase the frequency of our positive interactions with this child. So now he's getting the connection that he needs. It has nothing to do with the sticker. It has everything to do with the connections and the genuine delight that people are showing in him when he is, and sometimes it's feigned delight, but they're trying to positively reinforce his behavior. So the sticker chart worked because we met his intrinsic need for connection, not because we gave him a reward, but we're tricked into thinking it was the reward chart. So then we do another reward chart for the next child who needs mastery, and we wonder why it doesn't work. Yeah. So that was a really long way of answering Liz's question.
Yeah, I think that was definitely a curly question. I think a really good point around, just trying to, I think it's often quite common for us to look at some of these, rewards and consequences. It feels quite easy because it's black and white. But like you said, to really go deep into it, and even intrinsic and extrinsic motivation is not black and white. There's different grades of extrinsic motivation. So, for example, if I believe my self-image is that I am really conscientious and do good work, then even though it might not be something that lights me up and I'm super passionate about on a topic, say for example, if I'm studying accounting versus psychology, which is my intrinsic motivation, but if I believe I'm conscientious and I want to demonstrate that to somebody, then that's still extrinsic, but it's a higher degree because it's aligning with my identity. So like that, even there's a link then to some of the DC research that Sandi just mentioned there. I've just posted this this is real. I think there's some
for
of
the nerds.
Yeah.
Welcome, nerds.
Yeah.
Ryan and DC's work is exceptional, but it's self-determination theory has also been used cross-culturally in loads of research around the world by people beyond Ryan and DC as well. But yeah, this is beautiful work on intrinsic motivation. Yeah.
But I think if we maybe just simplify it for today's session, I'm just conscious of time, so we might see if we drop any other questions in the chat. We'll try and get to those all before the end. But just to kind of summarize, I know this, as you can see, it can go really deep. And Sandi, thank you so much for shedding a light on kind of just how deep this is. And I think this is why, this is really encouraging for us as a sector to look at, like, all the stuff that we have to do as educators is extremely complex. This is human psychology. This is why it is such an important profession. And so leaning into that challenge in leadership and just taking it a step at a time. This is a journey. You're not going to get there tomorrow. But I think just gaining some inspiration as a first step, trying to understand yourself, looking at these different frameworks, will help kind of evolve, I guess, that process in your leadership on how do you sort of really understand the current state, understand different ways to see problems and then brainstorm them together. And in a time like this where there's multiple competing priorities, I know there's a lot of occupancy pressures across the board as well and things like this. This can hopefully give a bit of a framework into how do we think about getting the team humming, getting the culture humming, so that you guys can, realize that vision. But I think today really showed that there's so much depth to this and, we're all on a learning journey together. So thank you so much for everyone for contributing to that. I might just jump into some Q&A right now.
And also, while you're looking at that, I just wanted to mention Liz talked about boundaries, and I have a whole lot to say about boundaries. But I'll point you to the Cupify This podcast on Spotify. So season 1, episode 1 of, and I'll just type it in here, Cupify This. Is the podcast that is what is the Phoenix Cups framework, and it's like 15 minutes of me and Chris banging on his philosophy, I'm psychology, interesting dinner time conversation that you get to listen to in the podcast. So then a few episodes in, like after we cover each cup and skill to fill and will to fill, we talk about boundaries, and it was on the back of us watching something that Brené Brown had done on boundaries, and we went, oh, like that, and we started cupifying it, and then we ended up getting the microphone out and doing a podcast on it. So I have everything that kind of have to say from that stems from that podcast, so you can check that out, because I think it's important to talk about what are boundaries, and in short form, boundaries are kind of what we put around our cups and other people's cups and the community's cups to make sure that they don't get emptied. Right. So I think sometimes when we're talking about boundaries, we're like sort of like, oh, well, the boundary is you can't take that equipment into the sand pit. No, that's your rule. And I'm not going to pull apart your rule right now, but I think it's dumb. Right. So that is that's a rule. That's not a boundary. And boundaries are important for us to teach children about. And but we need to be honest about what is a boundary, because a boundary is something that protects our needs and that makes sure that the needs and rights of everybody within the community can get met.
Yeah, again, another deep concept. So I think, for those that really found, I guess, this is a bit of an entry into thinking about leadership, thinking about different frames that you can use. There's so much more to unpack here, and I just wanted to put up a link here to Sandi's course. Sandi, do you want to do a bit of an overview of this for those that might be interested in further diving into this?
Oh yeah, this one is coming up. It's Strong Leaders for Stronger Teams. So it is something that I've done for a long time, kind of the gist of what we've talked about, but just unpacked a little more. And it used to be a self-paced course, but we've brought it back to life as some live webinars, so that we can chat, and then you'll get all the online self-paced content as well. And we also have lots of courses that Phoenix support, but my courses are the Educator Toolkit for Behaviour and the Phoenix Cups 101. What I would like to do, actually, because I just thought of it, is, and I should have organised this earlier, is give everybody here the Phoenix Cups 101 for free. It's $48 at the moment, but I will organise a coupon code for you. This coupon code will work in about 5 minutes when I tell one of my team that I've done something annoying. So we'll just call it Manna 2026. There we go. So if you find the Phoenix Cups 101 course and give me a minute to get this set up, put in Manna 2026 as a coupon code, that'll give it to you for free. Because that will take you on, like if you're interested in cups, and it's new for those of you who've done that kind of stuff before, like our wellbeing challenge. This is a whole new hyped up version just released. So you'll find loads of new stuff in there. I talk about nature versus nurture, the impact of epigenetics on genes and changing need strength profiles. All the curly questions that often come up with the Phoenix Cups are now in there. And I talk about boundaries in there. So I will make sure that you can get the whole lot there for free. But do feel free to join up to a paid course like Stronger Leaders, Stronger Teams. I would love to see you there.
Awesome. Thanks, Sandi. And for those, we have another exciting webinar with another sector great tomorrow, Maggie Dent. So
Yay.
if you haven't registered that, this is a double header this week and two incredible personalities. So
love Maggie. Tell her I said hi.
We will. Great. Well, thank you everyone for joining. We really appreciate your time. I'm really keen to kind of get your feedback as well. We're always trying to, I guess, be better and find more ways to contribute meaningfully to the sector. Big thanks to all of you that do such incredible work day in, day out. Yeah, we're here supporting you. So really appreciate that, and look forward to seeing everyone next time. Thanks so much.
See you all. Thanks for joining.
Thanks, team. Bye. Okay, in live.